I have two questions actually. One on these new variants that we're seeing, and the expectation seems to be that they could really start to have an impact on cases by March, maybe gain a foothold by April and become the dominant cases that we're seeing. So, what specifically is the administration doing to stop that from happening beyond recommending that people social distance and wear masks?
Well, let me turn first to Dr. Fauci to talk about the science behind these variants and what is likely to happen, or what we know or what we believe, and then to Dr. Walensky after that, so she can discuss the actions we're taking as a country and the actions we expect Americans to take to help with your question. Thank you.
Well, Caitlin, there are a number of variants that we're concerned about, and one that is quite well established already in the United States, and that is the 117 that is in about 28 or 29 states and more than 315 cases that have all been reported. As you alluded to, the fact is that when you have a virus that has ability to transmit more efficiently than the wild type in the community, sooner or later, by pure viral dynamics itself, it will become more dominant than the wild type. So we have that already there. We have a situation where there have now been reported in very specific places in South Carolina, for example, the isolate or the mutant that is the 351 from dominant in South Africa. Again, that seems to have a very good fitness for spread. So whether or not that's going to ultimately take over in the sense of being dominant is unclear by now. The projection that is made with regard to the UK is that probably by the end of March, the beginning of April, it actually will become more dominant in this country. As I mentioned at the very end of my remarks, I'll leave it in a moment to Dr. Walensky to talk a bit about what we're doing from a surveillance and other standpoint. But the fundamental principle of getting people vaccinated as quickly and as efficiently as you possibly can will always be the best way to prevent the further evolution of any mutant, because when you do that, you prevent replication, and replication is essential for mutation. So over to you, Dr. Walensky.
Thank you, Dr. Fauci, and for that question. So there are numerous things that we are doing. As Dr. Fauci noted, the prevention measures, the mitigation measures for variants are actually exactly the same, regardless of what variants you have. We have scaled up surveillance dramatically just in the last 10 days, in fact. But our plans for scaling up surveillance are even more than what we've done so far. So we have partnerships with commercial labs. We are now asking surveillance from every single state, at least 750 surveillance strains per week. And we have 7 collaborations across universities to scale up surveillance to the thousands per week, so that we can get a foothold as to see whether these projections of having this take hold by the middle of March or middle to late March are actually true. What we're also doing is offering support to the states that have identified these surveillances, specifically South Carolina with the 351 variant, reaching out to help with vaccination, as vaccination is, again, one of these things we need to do, with resources for increased testing, increased surveillance, as well as increased resources for vaccination and funding. So we're working hard to make sure that we can actually do the mitigation measures, the vaccination, do the surveillance. And then finally, we have cross-agency collaborations with CDC, NIH, BARDA, DOD, so that when we get these strains, we can do the science and understand the impact of these variants on our vaccines as well as on our therapeutics.
Let me add just one more comment. Look, if we as a country want to turbocharge our efforts at sequencing, which I believe should be a shared bipartisan perspective, we can do that. And what we need is the Congress to quickly pass the American Rescue Plan, which contains the resources necessary to get all of our very, very talented people around the country who are world experts at sequencing to get on this as quickly as possible. So I couldn't urge people and the Congress to be more focused on the American Rescue Plan than I can, given the state of the variants.
maybe if I could make one more point, and that is that by the time someone has symptoms, gets a test, has a positive result, and we get the sequence, our opportunity for doing real case control and contact tracing is largely gone. And so I think, and I believe that we should be treating every case as if it's a variant during this pandemic right now.
Let's go to Caroline Chen.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. This is a question for both Dr. Walensky and Dr. Fauci. So when epidemiologists talk about herd immunity, they often say about 70 or 80% of the population is the goal. Given that about 20% of the US population is children, do you think it's important to have eligibility expanded to children for vaccination as soon as possible? And if so, what is being done to get to that goal?
Yes, that's a very good question. And in the candidates that we're talking about now, certainly the Moderna and the Pfizer, the two that have been given the EUA, we've already started on what's called an age de-escalation testing. What that means that you start off, for example, we know with one of the vaccines, it's 16, and then one is 18 years old. We're going to go down from 16 to 12, from 12 to 9. And what you do, because you don't want to have to, and I'll explain why in a moment, to go through an efficacy trial where you're involving tens of thousands of children to show efficacy. What you can do is in a much smaller trial, measured in hundreds to a couple of thousands, to do what we call safety and a phase 2A for immunogenicity. And if you can show that it's safe and that in fact it induces the kind of response that is reflective of the protection, namely the correlate of immunity, what you can do is then bridge that to the efficacy data that you got from the 30,000 trial with Moderna and the 44,000 trial that we did with Pfizer. So in direct answer to your question, over the next couple of months, we will be doing trials in an age de-escalation manner so that hopefully by the time we get to the late spring and early summer, we will have children being able to be vaccinated according to the FDA's guidance.
Thank you.
Dr. Walensky, do you want to add anything?
I was just going to add our current data from schools, from summer camps and whatnot also suggests that the children not only have decreased rates of symptoms, but have decreased rates of transmissibility. Those estimates for herd immunity are very much based on rates of transmissibility. And so what pertains to herd immunity among adults may be different among children.
Right. I wanted to ask about the 2/3 of cases in Los Angeles County, it's been reported, came out in the last 2 months, or been reported in the last 2 months. One study said that the factor was this recent coronavirus surge of a new variant, Cal 2.20C. What more do we know about the LA variant, and what does that tell us about other big cities? Should we expect maybe a New York, a New Orleans variant? What is LA teaching us about what our big cities might be experiencing?
Thank you. Dr. Fauci, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Well, what it tells us is what I alluded to in one of my prior comments, that when you have a significant amount, and we certainly have that now, and I've had that very much so over the past couple of months with the very steep slope of acceleration of cases that we've seen, is that the virus will continue to mutate and will mutate for its own selective advantage. So if you have a lot of cases in Los Angeles and you have this mutant that you referred to, you can be almost certain that as long as there's a lot of virus circulating in the community, there will be the evolution of mutants, because that's what viruses do, particularly RNA viruses. And that's what I was referring to just a moment ago. You're giving the virus an opportunity to adapt. So when people make an immune response against it, particularly in someone like that might be immunosuppressed, where the virus stays in that person for a longer period of time, it gives the virus the chance to adapt to the forces, in this case, the immune response, that's trying to get rid of it. And that's where you get mutations. So if the question you were asking, which is very relevant, is that what do we think is happening in other cities? I think what the underlying issues that are going on in California and Los Angeles very likely are taking place throughout the country, which is one of the reasons why, as Dr. Walensky has said, that we are really ratcheting up our genomic surveillance capability and our ability to get that information in real time.
Dr. Walensky, anything you'd like to add? Or is that
No,
okay?
I think we got it.
Okay. So I think what we're saying collectively is let's not be quite such polite hosts to this virus. Let's turn the tide and do like other countries who do everything possible to shut out the growth of this virus and make sure it's not welcome. Well, thank you all for attending the briefing. I hope that this is useful to you. We intend to continue to do these every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with the same group, and we will bring others on as well. So if you have any feedback on how we can continue to share this information with the public, please let us know. Thank you and have a great weekend.